Welcome to Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield. This episode is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Call us at 719-452-4803. Here's your host, Trevor Sherry.
Can I just say that I love that intro?
I love that intro too, yeah.
So just gets me so pumped. And I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is fixed mindset versus growth mindset. But I want to start off by asking you how you are today.
I'm good. This has been a lot of fun engaging our listeners and the first two podcasts. So I hope people are benefiting from it. And I think from here on out, we're kind of going to start diving deeper and really give people something to talk about.
Oh, yeah. And I'm super excited for it. Just fodder for a conversation, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're talking about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Let's lay some definitions down.
Well, before I lay definitions, I think it's really important that we have, this is the third episode, really talking about, why conversations, how to have conversations, safe people, those kinds of things. And we alluded to the fact a couple times that in order to have these good conversations, you really need to be open-minded. You need to be ready for growth. You need to be curious and have a seeking type of mindset. And in some ways, it totally goes against how our education system is set up and how we've maybe been taught over the years of, what you have is what you got, and good luck. If you're this intelligent, this is as far as you're going to go. If you're this talented, this is as far as you can go. And I think it really plays into a lot of our relationships is that if we come into it going, well, here's what I have to offer, and that's it, or here's really my mindset on this, and that's it. There's no room for growth. There's no room for reaching across and shaking somebody's hand and getting to know them and going deeper and that kind of stuff. And so that's the reason we put this episode where it's at, because it's going to lay the foundation, I think, for other conversations when we talk about counseling and why counseling and some of the other harder topics like race and depression, anxiety, all these different things that we really don't talk about. And if we don't have this mindset, it's really going to be pointless, to be honest.
Yeah, that's huge. So having a mindset that's willing to develop and be more than we are now, not just settling for what we've been told or are telling ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I want to use the terms today, fixed mindset and growth mindset, is it's come from years and years of research from an amazing Stanford professor named Carol Dweck. Dr. Carol Dweck out of Stanford, and she studies this idea of success and growth and change. Amazing book on mindset. Her website is mindsetonline.com if you want to do some more research after this. After you listen to this, because we're just going to lay a very, very shallow foundation, but there's so much more on this topic that I think our listeners could benefit from if they're interested.
Yeah, and this is fascinating to me because I don't know any of the research that you've done in preparation for this, so I'm super excited to hear what you have to share.
Well, I think I really want to keep it on the surface. We'll give some definitions of what fixed mindset and growth mindset are, and maybe you and I can dialogue a little bit about how we see that play out in our culture. Because I really want it to be very applicable for our listeners to go, oh, okay, this is an area in my life that I can change because that's very fixed, and I never knew that I could have a growth mindset around that. So let's if you're okay, let's start with some basic definitions.
Yeah.
And I think really if you just look at the title, fixed versus growth, you can kind of get an idea of what it is, right? But this idea of fixed mindset is really the idea that people believe that their basic qualities, their intelligences, their talent is fixed. What you see is what you get, right? And so, I think a lot of ways we see that measured is in an intelligence test. Well, I have a 125 IQ. That means I can only do so much. Or I have a 70 IQ or 90 IQ or whatever. Or, you know what? I am only so good at the guitar, or only so good at the piano, or I'm only so good at running, or whatever. And we never take into consideration anything else. This is what I've got.
And as you're saying that, all of those sound like super familiar things that I've said to myself, that I've heard other people say about themselves as well. And yeah, you're right. It's super pervasive in our culture today.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you think about it. how do we, if you look at our education system, how do we promote a fixed mindset? Well, we have standardized testing. We have, a certain path for success. If you want to be successful, you need to do this, and this, and then eventually you'll be successful. And I don't know the statistics, so I'm not going to even try. But I was reading an article a couple weeks ago that's saying that a lot of Ivy League college students, and more than half, I know that, are just not happy with their life because their whole life has been kind of this fixed mindset for success and growth, and they get to where they think they should be or where their parents wanted them to be or whatever, and they're like, I have no hope, I have no purpose, I have no direction, this is not fun, I'm not enjoying this.
So are you saying that the fixed mindset can cause unhappiness or just not being okay with where you are?
I think that'd be a safe statement to say. I don't think it's a kind of a carte blanche across the board, but I think it's a safe statement to say that. Because think about it. Has there ever been a time in your life when you've been just drawn in, like something that you saw, or a speaker that you heard, or a movie that you saw, or something, or a book that you read, and your heart almost skipped a beat, and you're like, oh, that would be so cool, or so fun. And then you had maybe a well-meaning adult or a teacher or somebody going, why would you even think of that? You're not going to be able to do that. Here's how you are. You are only good enough at this or that. And again, if you look at it, they're probably well-meaning people that don't want us to get our feelings hurt or get disappointed. But then that gets squelched and we don't pursue that.
So how do we not do that for kids? I know that there's probably a lot of parents listening who that may strike a chord of their kid coming up and saying, I want to be a princess, or I want to be a firefighter, or I want to be president of the United States. And what would be a response that wouldn't whatever the word
squelch?
Yeah, squelch. There you go. That works.
Well, let's go to the next definition.
Okay,
so
great.
I think I can answer that question in the next definition. So growth mindset is this idea that we have the belief that our basic abilities and talents and intellects can be developed over time. And that our brains and our talent are just a starting point. It's not the end all be all. And what that does, if we have that mindset, that growth mindset, is that it allows us to look at our child or our spouse or our friend and go, you know what? It's maybe not the end result, but it's the process. And so go ahead, go try to be an artist, or go take some art classes. And the growth mindset goes, what is being developed in that learning? So now learning becomes the objective, not the end.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That goes along really well with a quote of my favorite author, Brandon Sanderson, and it's this thought of journey before destination. The walk is the most important part of the journey.
Right, and so if we develop that in our kid, obviously as a parent, you're going to say, okay, this is just another thing my kid wants to do, and you have to put some boundaries around it. But if the joy is in the journey, right? And I'm a parent, so I get it that we're fighting our kids at times to go, just do your homework, right? And that becomes in some ways a fixed mindset. Well, I'm not good at math. Well, really? I don't know. Well, yeah, if you're sitting here going, I can't do algebra, and I've never, and the joy is taken out of it, and the journey is taken out of it. In some ways, that can be a fixed mindset. But if you have this growth mindset of, you know what, I'm not good at algebra, but I want to learn.
Yeah,
I want to explore what that's like, and you infuse the fact that, again, brains and talent are just the beginning,
the foundation for all that could come.
Right.
What comes initially to my mind with that is the cliched, age-old graduation speech of "you can be everything you set out to be," and then almost it sounds kind of similar to what we're talking about. Is it the same, or is there limitation to that? Or
no? Because I think I balk sometimes when I go to a graduation and I hear that, because no, you can't be anything that you set your mind out to be, because there's just some things that you're not going to be able to do, right?
Yeah,
I can be an astronaut because, well.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I can't be an astronaut.
I can't be an astronaut either, right? But no, it's. I think it can pair nicely with that, but it's this idea of I love to learn for learning's sake. And so the reason we're talking about this today is because when we're entering into relationship with people in conversation, I want to learn for learning's sake. Not because I have this end goal, not because I'm going to get something out of it at the end. All those things are going to happen, but it's this joy of learning and this love of learning. And I'm a little bit worried about these generations coming up in schools, because how many of our students really, truly have a love of learning, or it's because of what they have to do?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. My wife is a teacher here in town, as you know, and she has a lot of kids that are just there punching their time and trying to squeeze by and graduate and have no love. I mean, she's a math teacher, which is a lot of what you're talking about. We were reading a book recently talking about how math is a practice of developing your brain to think logically. Mm-hmm. And by doing your homework, by learning algebra, you may not need to use that specific information when you get into your career, but the process of your brain taking in this information and thinking through the problems the way you have to creates neural pathways that allow you to think logically and to process better. Mm-hmm. And I think that's beautiful as a learner.
Absolutely.
But these students couldn't care less.
Well, and I think that's, again, it's not an accusation on the education system. It's just kind of an observation. And so there are amazing teachers in the education system that are cultivating a love of learning in the, if you want to say, in the boxes that they're given, right? We can't get away from standardized testing because that's what is required of us. Okay, but with the time that you do have, how do you cultivate that love of learning in your students? And again, we can take a look at statistics overseas. Like, I don't have them right now. Doing a poor job right now with the statistics piece. But you look at countries in Europe, Holland, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, those kinds of places, and you look at their educational achievements, and they're through the roof. But then you look at how they do it, and it's this idea of cultivating a love of learning. And I think my hope for our listeners, I don't care whatever age. My grandfather was in his 90s when I was in middle school and high school, and he loved learning, reading, listening to music, conversing. We would usually talk about philosophy, but that desire, that love of learning, can carry throughout your whole life. And what happens is it actually grows, like you were saying, with the neuroplasticity in the brain. It actually grows the brain's capacity.
So, as I'm hearing that, I'm feeling encouraged because I love to learn. However, I recognize in myself that a lot of the times I love to learn about things that I enjoy, and there's a lot of things that I really will not go out of my way to learn.
Sure. And I think that's, as an adult, we get the luxury. We're not in college. You're still getting your degrees, but
struggling through.
But you're not in K through 12 anymore. I think that's the hard part. Is from a K through 12 program, even a K through 4 years of college, if that's the way the path you choose, you're going to be battling this. I have to do things that I really don't like, but how do I find the love of? If I have the love of learning, even if I don't like it, I'm still going to be curious about the outcome and what can better my life.
The joy of learning for learning's sake and
right.
Curiosity.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece. And when we get to be adults, sure, there's things like I don't really care to go learn how to play basketball or, the piano or those kinds of things. But in the spaces that I am, in the field that I'm in as a counselor, as a leader, as those kinds of things, how do I take that mindset into our staff meetings, into our supervision meetings, into meetings with other organizations where we're teaching or training, and they've got feedback? I think that's a big deal too, of how can I learn from those that are around me. And if it's this growth mindset of I still have things to learn, I don't know everything, and I come to the table with that posture, I think it's a big deal.
I want to put some highlight on what you said about if you're doing a training and they have feedback. For me at least, I grew up having the people around me hold positive feedback or the critical, whatever, like the word that I'm looking for, of critical feedback or whatever. And it's not enjoyable to hear, hey, that kind of sucked, here's how you can do it better, or getting a paper back and it's all red. But that's feedback, and that promotes
Growth.
Sure.
It's all in how we look at it. And I think too, it's all in how we look at our own learning and our own growth. We're not going to have the ideal that somebody's going to come and give us critical feedback and do it in a way that is, kind and loving. It doesn't happen all the time. But if we are so engaged in the end of the journey of, I want to be this type of person that's takes in feedback, and I want to be this better person at the end of the journey, then we have to learn how to sit with that. And a lot of times too is just learning how to sit with it. Some feedback is good, some feedback's not. Some's relevant, some's not. Just because somebody gives you feedback doesn't mean you have to accept it either. And so I think that's when we're talking about these conversations and being in relationship with people as we're having these deeper conversations about, who knows? I mean, we haven't even planned out the rest of our season yet. And I know that we're going to engage in some topics that are going to rub people the wrong way, or just invite people into some vulnerability that can be kind of scary. And this idea of a growth mindset, the love of learning, it's that journey of, that sitting with that's going to hurt, but can I become a better person afterwards? What can I assimilate into my own life that's going to make me better for somebody else along the journey?
There seems to be a lot of humility in that.
There has to be. If we didn't have that, we would be completely defensive, and that's kind of what we see. I mean, if you turn on the news, again, I know it's an exacerbation of reality, but it's reality that we don't have these conversations on a daily basis because we go from zero to defensive, and there's no humility, there's no growth mindset, and there's no, I'm okay being proven wrong.
That's a hard one to sit with.
Right? And if we don't come to the table with that, none of these conversations are going to work.
Yeah. I know for me, there's been times where I feel like there's an individual in my life, a good friend of mine, or something, and I see something and I don't feel comfortable correcting them because I'm afraid of how they'll react. Is there a way that we can kind of advertise that we're willing to grow and to show our close friends, like, hey, I recognize where I am and I want to be better?
Why not say that? Especially if you're in a relationship with this individual or these individuals. I statements, and I know if anybody's been in counseling, they're probably rolling their eyes right now, because I statements, is if a counselor is doing what they're supposed to be doing and you're in a marriage session or a family session, instead of being you, and the person getting defensive, it's providing that corrective feedback or that experience of the individual with an I statement, even if it's good. Like, I know we're going to have conversations in here with our guests and that kind of stuff that may be very thought-provoking or very vulnerable producing. And it's not an accusation, but if you can phrase it in this I statement, I experience you in this way because, or I experienced what you said in this way because, now you're kind of back-ending it into some confrontation where it's not accusatory.
Would you mind, let's attempt an experiment here.
Okay.
Would you correct me, give me feedback on something using I statements, and then I'll try to respond in my reaction,
okay,
and we can talk through the way that I could have reacted, or if that was the way I should have.
Well, I'm going to call your body. Our listeners can't see your body posture, but I'll just say, Trevor, I'm experiencing that you're not really engaged in this podcast because of how you're sitting right now. Is that true?
I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm very much engaged and not really paying attention to my body at all.
Okay. Well, I get the sense that you are a little bit more disengaged because of you're leaning back and your legs are kind of just spread out, and there's not an intensity about you.
Well, this is just how I feel comfortable. I mean, I'm not going to sit in some formal position while I'm talking on the radio.
Sure, right. So that's a reactionary thing, right? Calling out body posture, calling out facial features or those kind of things. But because I know you so well, it's hard to call out like feelings or whatnot. But if we're engaged in a conversation, let's say about politics or about race or religion, and I have a strong opinion about something, and you snap at me, I can say I'm feeling. I am experiencing you, and I'm experiencing your anger right now. Can you explain that a little bit more to me?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm calling out the anger, but I'm asking you to put more context to it.
And so that's awesome. How did that response? Was that if I'm trying to be somebody who is correctable, who wants to grow, was that the kind of response that I should have had, or is there a way that I could have done that better?
If you can check your defensiveness. Right. And so this is where the self-awareness comes in. If you can actually go, okay, I'm feeling really defensive right now. Why? Before you even engage in the conversation or the response, right? Somebody called you out, and now you're kind of you're thinking about, I could get really snippy right now.
Yeah.
Or I can go, you know what? There's a reason they said that. So ask clarifying questions. So can you tell me more about why you're experiencing me in that way? Yeah. What are you sensing that I'm not getting? So be curious in return instead of just snapping or being upset.
So instead of saying this is just how I sit and I'm blah blah blah, it would have been a better approach for me to say, well, what kind of posture would you think would show my attentiveness and my connection to this conversation?
Right. Yeah, and it's just that clarifying question. And it may be that the person that's bringing that feedback then is proven wrong. And that's okay. But here we are in that exchange, and how often, I'm going to ask the listeners, how often do you actually sit with somebody and have an exchange like that?
Yeah.
In a way that is growth producing versus growth stifling.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And I think that's such a practical way to go about showing how to have some of these conversations, and especially with some of the more in-depth, uncomfortable conversations we're planning on having in future podcasts.
Yeah.
I think that's so important just to check our defensiveness. I mean, even in that moment, it was an experiment, and it was something that I knew, like I was asking for it literally,
right.
But I still felt that like, well, what's wrong with my posture? And that's hard. I think that's part of human nature, and being able to set that aside is really difficult at times.
I think the reason that we're beating this point into place for our listeners is that I don't want you to enter into any of these conversations unless you've spent this time in self-awareness. And I know you've asked me at the end of the last two episodes, what are some takeaways today? And I think I've said both times, like, reflect into yourself. What type of person are you? Are you a safe person? What kind of, and I think it's the same thing here, is that at our core, we crave these types of conversations. We crave these connections, and we're stifled by social media and our busyness and the distractions of what is our culture right now. And we never pay attention on self-growth and self-promotion from that perspective. And so if our listeners can really step up and go, hey, Dr. Mayfield, what you're saying, Trevor, what you're saying, if this is going to happen and you're telling me to do these things, I'll take some time to self-reflect, because I know deep in my soul I really crave that. And so that's what, I mean, if our listeners can take that away, I think that's going to be great. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, go to mayfieldcounseling.com/candid conversations and check out our Facebook page, Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield.